Welcome to ASCC's Concrete Talk. I'm Rick Lobdell with
Matt Popoff.
And today we have a very special guest, the president of the board of ASCC, Miss Chris Klemaske. Now, right before we started, I said Klemaske, not Klemaske. So explain the last name, so that we all understand, because, that's one of those things we always come across. We all have name problems. So I was right on that. Did I say it right the second time?
You said it perfectly the second time. Everyone loves to add an N in there, but it's Klemaske.
Which is why you didn't get my email, because I had an N in there.
Well, there you go. Terrible. He'll shoot out the people that know me and don't know me. If you're a spam person and calling me and that's how you pronounce my name, I'm like, yeah, there's nobody here by that name.
Sorry.
That's funny. I was trying to do I was looking up a little bit on LinkedIn and stuff like that today, and I came across, it says, you need to be verified. You're not verified. So I was going to click to verify it, but it makes you do it through Clear. I don't know if you guys have done this yet or not.
Mm-mm.
And
the same thing you used to go check in at the airport?
Correct. It's the same thing. And so it said that your name has to be identical to your ID. You literally have to scan your ID, all this kind of stuff. Well, the problem is my real name is Richard, but everybody calls me Rick. My LinkedIn account is Rick. I'm not changing that. So either I'm going to not get verified or whatever. I'm not going that far because I need to be verified.
If it makes you feel better, I trust you that you're you.
Me too.
Never know. Anything happen.
There is only one Rick Lobdell.
Now I'm going to start sending weird messages to you guys and question that.
Right.
Well, first of all, Chris, thank you for joining us. We've been planning this for a while, and I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. And I just realized my mic still does not sound right, so we're going to just roll with it.
Okay.
My first thing that I wanted to start with you, when we were at ASCC this year, you were asked to speak in front of the emerging leaders.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be at that meeting, and I got to listen in on your history that a lot of us never really knew the entire history. We knew you worked for TV Pennick. We knew you were married to Byron. We knew you've been a part of this industry for a long time and a part of this organization for a long time. But I never really knew how it all started and kind of your background and how you got into it. So would you love to share that with the audience again, if you don't mind? You don't have to, as much as you want to.
Sure. I've been part of concrete my whole adult life, on my whole married life with Byron. And I was working for him in his office, and I noticed invoices coming through for people doing concrete restoration for Klemaske Brothers at the time. And it was a good amount of money that we were paying another company to come in and take care of. And I asked Byron, my husband, I said, so why is there a reason why a woman couldn't do this? And he said, if you can load a buffer in and out of the back of a truck and carry, pails of material, then there's no reason you couldn't do that. So went out, trained, learned how to do it, and then started my own concrete restoration business. And so basically what I would do, they were my first client. And then it just expanded from there. I had a friend of mine at the time that asked her if she wanted to go into business with me. So it was a woman-owned business. She and I went out and did all the work, hard work. I had acrylic nails at the time. I love to tell the story because we used to use agriglaze, which is illegal now. I think you can't get it. I don't think you can get it anywhere. But it would literally melt my nails using MEK and, running the buffer and, doing all of that. So, it definitely wasn't a vanity job, but it ended up being something that I was really good at. My partner at the time decided that she wanted to do this on her own. And so we parted ways. She never continued. I continued on with the business, and was offered a job at a company called Progressive Concrete. And they asked me if I would come in and head up their restoration department. So did that. Then they decided that it would be a great idea if maybe I went into residential concrete sales. So went out and met with clients. Interesting for me is that I feel like everything I did beforehand in my lifetime kind of prepared me for this, being able to, show up at somebody's house and take a look at the work they needed done and come up with solutions for them, and found out I was good at it and I really enjoyed it. Evolved from there to, okay, you're doing great at residential. They used to call it project development is what I did. And so they said, we want you to start working on commercial projects. So started working on commercial concrete sales and project development, working with architects and owners and contractors, and just fell in love with the business. And that's how I got started.
What are these? What years are these, Chris? Like when did you work for Byron, and then when did you start your own?
So it would be the late 80s. So probably around 1988 is when I started. Then, and there weren't any other women out there doing any concrete work at that time. Sure. I was very accustomed to being the only woman on at a job trailer or on a job site, and it was kind of a novelty. I can't tell you how many times I heard, do we talk to you about this, or is there someone else at the office maybe we should be talking to? I'd say, no, right. I'm the person you should talk to. So it was a woman in that industry was rare at the time.
Sure. I'm sure it still is, right?
It really still is, unfortunately, because it's a great business to be in. And if you're creative and enjoy people and, I love taking a project from the idea to plans to having it installed. There's nothing more satisfying than that process. You both probably feel that as well. We get to work on some amazing projects that change people's experience when they see it, when they visit it. And that's what's so amazing about decorative concrete.
So, yeah, I completely agree with you. And one funny thing I have when you were talking about the chemicals you were using, destroying your nails and everything. When my very first 2 weeks in working for my company before I bought it, we were stripping carpet glue off of 5,000 square feet in a church. And that was literally like the start to me being introduced. And it wasn't until after that 2 weeks that I even found what decorative concrete was, when we started actually doing the decorative side of the project. But we were stripping it with a chemical that was supposed to be non-toxic. It was a mess to do. It took us 2 weeks to do it. I can't believe I even kept I wanted to even keep the job at the time. But it literally destroyed my boots. One day I was there and I started noticing this little black specks following behind me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And literally it was the heel of my shoe just completely disintegrating. So yeah, we have a lot of cool chemicals in our industry.
Well, it used to, right?
That's true. It's going away.
You can't use those anymore, right?
I'll use this one. This one's still considered biodegradable and not as bad as some of the other strippers I've used. Yes, actually.
Biodegrade your boots.
It did.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is, have you ever poured concrete, Chris?
The answer to that would be no, I haven't. I
thought I was the only one all this time.
No,
that is.
I've been on lots of concrete pours. I am a great critic and appreciator of concrete, but the reason that my projects that I've worked on and developed over the years are so amazingly beautiful is because of the teams I've been part of. I mean, I've really been fortunate to be a part of the best concrete installing teams, I'm going to say, in the world when it comes to decorative concrete. And that's not an exaggeration. I mean, that's the truth. They're
It,
craftsmen beyond.
no, you're right on that. Not only that, but the scale of some of the projects that I've seen that you guys have done. Like I remember, I want to say, wasn't it in Columbus? Did you guys do the casino there?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it the casino? And I had gone there the night before ASCC, and I was just randomly talking to Byron, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's our concrete." I'm like, "What?" I was telling him this whole story about how cool it was and all this kind of stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, we did that." I went, "No, you're in California. What do you mean you're in Columbus, Ohio? I don't understand." I couldn't wrap my head around the scale of the business that you were a part of, and how it was all over the place. It wasn't just the or the West Coast or anything like that. It's all over, and that's a big deal. I mean, I never thought of a scale like that when it comes to commercial. I never did anything over, the largest project I did was probably 30,000 square feet at the most. And that took me, like, Matt laughs at me because that was like 6 months of work. He's thinking it's a couple days because it's concrete. I'm like, no, I didn't pour the concrete. It was way after it was poured. So I'd never thought about the amount of scale until I had that conversation with him and started paying attention to the work that you guys were involved with. And it's pretty amazing, I gotta say.
For me, one of the things that would drive my team and still drives my team crazy is that I've never said no to a client. I've never said no to an owner. I've always said, we're going to figure it out and we'll figure out how to do things. And some of the things that we've done over the years were firsts. I mean, they were just absolute first in our industry, and then we're kind of carrying it out. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, but it's really true. We did a wall at Moonlight Beach in Southern California, and it was a sedimentary wall, and it was going to be, and so that needed to show layers of the sediment of the earth going in and out. So it was going to be on the interior of the building and on the exterior of the building. And it was going to be 3 different colors. And then in between each color was going to have a different kind of sand or aggregate. And I was like, oh yeah, we can do that. And then I went back to the office and I said, okay, this is what I've agreed to. And here's the photo. And boy, those guys figured it out. I mean, there's never been a challenge or an idea or a vision of an owner or architect that we haven't been able to pull off. And that's one of the another amazing thing about decorative concrete.
Was that
Yeah.
the restroom? Wasn't
Yes.
it? Or the restroom building that you
Yes.
guys did?
And then the lifeguard building as well.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That thing is gorgeous.
And it's still, that was a few years back, but that's the other thing is if you do decorative concrete correctly and do the proper finish for the area, it doesn't age. Back in the day when it was all about stamped concrete, there was definitely, you can tell, okay, that was done in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, but decorative concrete now is timeless in terms of the finishes. And so that's a great thing for the owners.
What you said really stuck with me because it's what I preach to my guys every day is like, we don't say no. And I've always had this mentality, and, my dad's kind of ingrained this mentality into my head also, but it's, we just don't say no. And we get to do a lot of really fun projects that nobody else gets to do because of it. And it's so fun to be able, I know what you're talking about, because it's so fun to be able to build these projects even from scratch, if it's something like that, and then be able to put it together for a customer, regardless of who they are. But if you want me to change your sprinklers, I'll do it for you. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, I don't know anything about sprinklers, but I'll figure it out. You want us to pay us to do it? Let's do it. Let's go. So
absolutely. One stop shop. Actually, I did the first reactive stain project that was ever done in Southern California was my project. And it was for an architect in Del Mar who had a house full of big dogs. And he had seen this
Like
somewhere.
like physical dogs, like animals.
Animals, yeah.
Oh,
And they wanted to take the carpet up. And so I went in and I'm trying to remember, it was a Schofield product at the time. I think they're the only ones that had it. And I went in and it was actually my dad and I went in and did that job for this residence. And I took Byron over there and I said, look at this. Isn't it amazing and beautiful? And he said, that is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. He hated the project. And then reactive stain just took off, from there. But I did the first one in Southern California.
Did he have an issue with the look of it, or did he have an issue with the was it the technique or the idea?
It was the inconsistency of it and the unpredictability of it, which
It's funny.
all of us know that that's even a challenge today. You got to get everybody holding hands and walking in a straight line and agreeing that you don't have any control over what it's going to look like, especially on existing concrete. But it was kind of out there at the time. That was again back in the 80s.
The first time I did acid stain, I went back to my boss and said, "Don't you ever make me do that again." And he's like, "Why?" And I said, "Because it's not predictable. I'm an artist. I need to be able to control everything I'm doing, and I have no control over this. Why would you think this is a good idea?" And then how many years later, I've been doing it this whole entire time, and I became a master of it. And who would have thought that after that? It was hilarious.
Well, that's why we
So
changed the name from acid stain to reactive stain, because then it's easier to explain to a layperson that it
I
reacts.
thought it was hard to explain. Yeah, I know what you mean, but I think it's easier to say acid than or explain acid than reactive, because they're like, well, what do you mean by reactive? Acid, they know it's going to do something. It's got acid in it.
so help the concrete finisher here. What is a reactive stain?
So it's actually a chemical reaction that happens when you apply the liquid to the concrete, and it reacts to the concrete. And so,
It reacts to the concrete.
right.
Okay.
And so that's why we would call it reactive stain, because seriously, at least in my world, it's like a lot of times you don't know what you're going to get, even if you do a mock-up. Your mock-up's not going to look anything like, what, even if that you do everywhere else, because some concrete contractor may have laid, a knee board down on the concrete in that area, or finished it different, there's just so many things. And then we've gotten into taking, like you were saying, carpet up, and you take carpet or you take tile, or, you learn all about ghosting of tile, because it reacts differently in those areas. And so it was it was an adventure in concrete for sure.
That's right. Like we don't dabble in the decorative anywhere near as much as you guys do, but we have a lot of people that it's just they explain what they want, and they talk about these super consistent, like, yeah, I want it to be all the exact same color. And then it's like, I think you just want paint. Like you want it so consistent, and you don't want concrete. Like concrete is variable. That's the beauty of concrete. And it's constantly different. What you're explaining to me is basically that you wanted like a painted wall, like perfectly. I'm like, sorry, we're not the right application for you. I can't help you with that.
Yeah, you walk away. It's like people tried to do polished concrete when what the person actually wanted was terrazzo, and it's just, they're just setting expectations. We all know no matter what kind of concrete work you do, you've got to set those expectations.
That
And
is
I've had a lot of conversations lately about polished concrete, but the point of the conversation is they don't understand polish. They're thinking that what Matt does with his finish is polished, and because they put a densifier on it, it's polished. And I'm like, no, that's not the same. We're like, what grinder did you use? What diamond? And they're like, no, we didn't grind it. We just polished it. And I'm like, oh, never mind. Never mind.
Well, and there's too many different terms in our industry as far as, polished concrete is, or level one, or we want a class A finish, or it's like, or we want a hard trowel finish. And it's like, those all could really mean the exact same thing. And I think that's a common misconception in our industry, but it leaves the importance to communication, which we try to do, you know.
Right. It is, like she said, customer expectation. It's the biggest thing in our industry is to really truly understand what they're saying and how to educate them on what they want. And it takes a lot. It's not you don't go meet a client for 30 minutes and be done and be like, I got it. No, you're going to talk to them again. It's going to happen. And even my employees, it was much easier when I was the employee, I was the one going out to the job because of my background with art and everything. I could easily have this conversation with the client. It was a little bit harder when I had to switch over to being in charge of everything, designing everything and selling everything and trusting these guys to do what needs to be done. And they were the ones that would go and they wouldn't be able to have that conversation as easy. And then I'd have to show up anyway and have that conversation again and then tell my guys what she wanted or he wanted and stuff like that. I mean, it didn't bother me. It was cool, but it was so important is the point. Like you can't just not do that. You can't just wing it. You have to make sure that one of the biggest things for me is, because it's all residential for me, is my clients do not go out of town while I'm doing the work. If they do, I stop, because there is so much to it, and you want to make sure you understand what they really do see, and so they have to be involved. And I think it's part of the sale or part of the experience and part of the referral afterward, because I do treat it as an experience. I want you to be involved. I don't care if you hold my sprayer. I want you there. If you can't show up, I'm not doing the job at that time until you can.
I think for me, yeah, when getting all the stakeholders together, whether it's a residential job or it's a commercial job, is so important, and having a conversation amongst everyone. So owner, architect, contractor, so that everybody understands what the process is. That's something that I enjoy, because getting everybody being part of the agreement of how we're moving forward, but then also having everybody attached to the outcome, right? And so for me, those are my favorite meetings. Are the ones where you get everybody's got ideas. We're all brainstorming. We're putting things together and then coming up with solutions. I think that's one of the most fun things I get to do.
I agree. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I never had an issue with the clients when it came to that. It was when they weren't reactive to all that stuff that it was a problem. But I agree. The more we talked, the better. I mean, it was just so much more fun. It was.
Yeah.
And
No.
I'm sure, Chris, you catch a lot of people off guard because, like you said, the guy that asked you, like, "Oh, are you going to be the one that comes out and does this?" Or like, "Oh, you're actually the one that's doing this." Like you, as in Chris Klemaske, is coming to do this, and I'm sure you catch a lot of people off guard with your knowledge of the products in the industry, mostly just because of your gender.
No, one of those things for me is that's actually a fun part of my process. Again, is people's low expectations, if you will. They're just, I don't know what they're expecting, but I do know what I'm doing. I do know the process. I haven't poured concrete, but I know the process from beginning to end, and have educated myself. I mean, I think one of the biggest surprises for people is that about 10 years ago, maybe, I might be off a couple of years, but I was the first president of the San Diego ACI, and the first woman president of that group. But I was also head of the Decorative Concrete Council at the same time. And it just, it takes some time to get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could see, like, I have to follow I got to follow in the footsteps of my dad, and in the same meetings, and they'd always be like, "Oh, great, who's this young kid that just got shoveled into a job?" And it's like then you start talking to them, and then they kind of warm up to you, and then it's like before you know it, you're running the meeting because they can't put together their own meeting, and it's interesting to see how that like levels of respect go up as the more that you try to educate and not just talk their brains off, but educate them and actually get everybody on the same page, and they start to give you a little bit more respect that way, I believe.
No, I agree. I mean, we all walk into those situations where, yeah, people don't know what to expect. And I mean, whether you're a young person coming into it or a woman or an artist, an art person, and now you're in the concrete business. It's like, okay, prove it. And for me, that's something that's fun to do. And it's always a good challenge. And I always can tell right away that I've got some work to do. But when it's all said and done, everybody walks away satisfied that they're getting the information. The other thing is I surround myself with really smart people. Um, and if I don't know the answer to something, I have a lot of people that do know the answer. And so I don't know everything, but I sure know who to ask.
That's the great thing about ASCC, and that's why I'm a member, because those are the smart people I call when I have those questions. I mean, it did change everything for me to learn so much more about concrete, having access to all these people and their knowledge, because we can't all know everything. It's impossible. There's too much to know. And another point, like when you were talking about like all of our different points of view of your age and being a female and me being an artist and everything like that. One of the things that my business. So when I first started my business, I hired a business consultant that I knew. And the first thing she did was everything I did, every business card, everywhere my name was, it said my name, comma, MFA, just like a doctor would do, because it's the highest degree I can get as an artist. And so why not? And I'm not kidding how many times I went to lawyers and doctors and all of these people that have spent all these years in college and everything like that. And they're like, what's MFA? And I'm like, really? You went to college, Master of Fine Art. And right away, I had respect. Right away, I immediately had their respect because I'm not just another contractor. That's all I needed to do all the time was just show that to them and make them ask that question. And boom, I had their attention. And I got the job probably 90% of the time just because of that alone, I bet. Well, and the quality of work, I'm sure. But I think it was more about that fact that I caught their attention and they knew that I wasn't just another contractor. I wasn't messing around.
Yeah,
it's like getting
mine's more the school of hard knocks. That's where my degree comes from.
well, and it's uncommon in our industry to see somebody with that at the end of their name or the beginning of their name. You don't see too many doctors in concrete or whatever, but you get to see a lot of FACIs and having a fellowship from ACI, and which I think is great because we spend a lot of time and a lot of money and putting ourselves through going to a lot of meetings and doing a lot of things for ACI. It's nice to be able to be recognized for that, and that definitely I believe that holds credibility.
No, absolutely. I agree with you.
Now, I also think that the DCC awards help with credibility too. I do believe that announcing that and telling my clients that I've had all these awards and showing them those awards and showing proof of it and everything like that, showing them the projects I've done that won awards and things, without a question, helped every one of my sales, if you look at it that way. I think those were very important for me too, to spend that time and invest the money into entering all of those and spending the money on the photographs and taking all of that serious to make sure that I could get those awards and stuff too. I think those also were a big deal when it comes to sales and respect and things like that from your clients.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know what? When I joined ASCC, so it's been probably 18 years that I've been a part of ASCC. The very first meeting that I went to, and I shared this at the Emerging Leaders, is it was we used to do a breakfast at the World of Concrete, and it was like all the business got taken care of at that breakfast, and every group got up and gave an update on what they were doing. And the gentleman that was running the DCC at the time, he got up in front of all of these very professional people wearing a jester's hat and proceeded to talk about decorative concrete. And I remember looking at Byron and saying, I don't think we're in the right place, because that isn't who I want representing me. And so, Byron said, well, let's just, let's give it a chance, and let's, spend some time. And one of the things that I really set out, or we set out to do, both Byron and I, was to change the perception of decorative concrete, because it really had kind of a negative connotation attached to it. There was more, these are the, kind of the cowboys out there, the outliers, the people doing things, these strange things. And that wasn't the case. That really wasn't the case at all. But it just, it wasn't highly respected back then. And the one thing that we've done an amazing job of at ASCC through DCC and CPC is shown truly who we are. And the awards to that, to that end, the awards where we started with our awards and where we are now. I mean, I have people that are very successful concrete contractors that say, we don't have anything good enough to enter this year for the decorative concrete awards, because the level
is too high.
Sorry?
Because the caliber is too high?
It has. I mean, we have really raised the caliber, and these are successful people, but they're like, no, we need to do better next year. And so I'm proud of where the decorative concrete awards have come. I mean, well, actually where DCC has come. In 18 years, it's evolved into a really powerful voice for our industry within the ASCC.
And we no longer are going out there in shorts and flip flops and, making a mess in front of everybody and getting it all over us and acting like it's no big deal. There's no issue. There's no safety issue. I mean, why not, pour concrete in flip flops? Who cares? Or stain concrete with acid stain and get it all over your legs. Like, it's no big deal. There's no safety issue, right? Because I remember those stories too. And I was one of those people. That was one of the points to ASCC, even from a safety point of view. I was like, what do you mean I can't do that anymore? And when I first started, I was barefoot the entire time on a pool deck, the entire project. I didn't know any better. Why was I supposed to know any better? And I also wasn't the boss. I was just an employee. So it wasn't my responsibility. It was my boss's responsibility. Once I understood that, I changed the whole mentality of my company and started paying attention to that. And we never wore shorts again, first and foremost, and we always protected ourselves all the time. It didn't matter how hot it was out. We at least had jeans on, maybe not always long sleeves. I went back and forth on that a few times, but we definitely were doing things better and more protective because of being a part of the organization. And the other thing I was going to say too is I remember, so Matt, here's a story about Chris and I, and one of the times that one of the years at ASCC that we sort of didn't get along very well. I love
you guys didn't get along?
Oh no, she chewed me out.
Oh,
and not in a negative way. She wasn't mean, but she was very persistent in making sure I understood the reputation of the DCC, just like she explained, all that she explained. So we were in Dallas, and because we were in Dallas, I had a Dallas Cowboys hat on. But it wasn't just a Dallas Cowboys hat, and it was at the dinner the first night, the opening dinner. And my cowboy hat was this big, styrofoam, like the foam hat. And I had it on sideways.
You're a concrete cowboy.
I mean, why not? Like, I'm having a good time. We're having a good time. And she tells me this story about this jester. And I'm like, well, that's cool. What are you talking about? It really didn't faze me. I didn't really think about it at the time. It really took me probably a few months to another year before it kind of sunk in of that respect and that reputation, because I just assumed the DCC had that respect already, and I didn't know that we had to work harder at it to get everybody's attention to understand that we knew what we were doing and we know a lot about concrete. I mean, I know, like you said, I know more about concrete than most people could possibly imagine, even though I've never poured an ounce. And so I had to realize what she was trying to say. I didn't get it at that moment at all. I also, to the same exact time, I went on a tour of Sundeck with Joe, and I was wearing a Pikachu hat the entire time.
Oh,
And I
gee.
thought it was fun. I was having a good time. I was trying to annoy Joe on purpose because I was just hanging out with Joe. I didn't know anything about Sundeck. I didn't know, what they were going to react to, or if they're, some of them remember it, stuff like that. No one reacted negative, but now looking back on it, I was like, yeah, I probably should have done that. That was probably a bad idea.
Well, we worked through it though.
We did. And that's why I brought it up. I mean, it was important. I'm glad you made sure I understood. And when I say made sure, Matt, it wasn't like we had one conversation about it. It was the entire day, the entire week. She made sure that I understood that, and I didn't. I honestly didn't, and I kept going. Why are you annoying me about this? It's not that big of a deal. It didn't sink in. It didn't. It took a while, but here we are on camera, and I will admit to this story because I thought she hated me for a long time after that, and she didn't. She's clarified that with me, but it was a rough start to our relationship, if you will. And I'm a much better person and much more grown up since then, I will say.
She does have a very subtle uh, humor approach. So it's sometimes I'm like, oh God, did I do something wrong? And then, she has
No.
a serious way of addressing humor and talking to you about this, something directly, which is especially since she's been the El Presidente. It's been I'm like, oh, I gotta, you know, make sure I gotta
Oh yeah.
compose myself. Right. Yeah. So
I'm more like, hey, the president's talking to me because we've been friends for years. This is cool. Like everybody else is worried about it. I'm sitting here like, hey, I'm
uh,
part of the conversation, right? I've known her for years.
yeah.
I
But with
appreciate
that,
the relationships. I mean, relationships in ASCC. I mean, I look at it and I mean, if someone wants to be successful in our industry, they've got to be a part of ASCC. I mean, really, I mean, you look at it and the standards that we set and what we continue to do and how we continue to evolve. I mean, Matt, you were very much involved in the strategic plan and where we're going with the organization, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see our new younger members, the next generation stepping up and taking leadership roles. To me, that is so, I mean, it's just so encouraging, and it is exciting because the new ideas, I mean, the things that we figure out and come up with by brainstorming and by our meetings and getting involved, it's all been because of a group effort, and so that's what keeps it fun for me is watching, seeing the senior members of our group and the well-established members, and then now getting ready to start this legacy committee so they can continue to contribute even after they've retired. But the new members and the young leadership, emerging leaders, great example, is just full of amazing people, and that's just going to make our industry even better than it already is.
I truly appreciate the fact, like, I truly appreciate the involvement from the legacy members or whatever you want to call it. But it's nice to, like, when we're in a strategic planning meeting, sure, we might, a couple of us younger guys might spit out a lot of ideas, and you guys respect the input and give us constructive feedback on it, which I think is fantastic. But I think we all have the same goal in mind, of course, of just making the industry better, regardless of what it is. But what you said about if you want to be a successful contractor, you need to be a part of the ASCC. I can't, I completely agree with you there. I can't argue about that. It's, sometimes I have a tremendous amount of concrete friends on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, other places like that might see my content or whatever that talk to me, and they constantly ask me like, hey, what was this trip that you went on to the cat testing facility or whatever it is? It's like, you need to be a part. Like, they'll ask me like, hey, do you have any other contractors or somebody's places I can go to like look at? And it's like, you need to be a part of the ASCC. Like, all these things you're asking, we need your input too, and most of them are on board about it, but there's a lot of them that are just stuck in their ways, and it's like I try to explain to them, we want your input too. It'd be great to have you as somebody that would put inputs into our industry and hopefully makes some changes like we plan on doing.
No, I think the idea I love for my competitors to be a part of this group as well. Because I
Sure.
want them to have the same goals that I have, the same safety goals, the same best practices, all of those things. What that high tide raises all ships. I like a level playing field. If when I'm going out there, so for me, the competition being part of what we do, I think is another really, it's an interesting part of our organization, but it's valuable, and we all put our heads together and we all work together for the better of our industry, and that's been something that was interesting. I remember first getting involved and Bev Garnett saying, you guys think you have secrets. There's no secrets out there, because behind closed doors, if you go to a meeting and say something, now someone's going to have your secret. It's like, that just isn't that isn't how it works. But no, I value ASCC. I think it's one of the best investments of my time and money that you can get in our industry.
Is this with or without your husband, or regardless?
Both. I
Both.
guess I don't understand your question. I want to make sure I'm answering you correctly.
You guys have, you guys are different in the ASCC as far as most couples are not both intimately involved in the industry, and you guys
Yeah.
definitely are both very intimately involved in the ASCC and the industry.
Yeah.
And I think the fact you guys show up together every time, I think it's fantastic. It's like, well, they still love each other. I mean, it must be working out just all right.
I know.
but it's just you guys make it work, and I love that, because that's very rare in our industry. Very rare in a lot of industries. Most couples don't do the same exact thing, or very close to the same thing, right?
Yeah, we come here. We have very different perspectives on the business. With him being, really he was my boss, if you will, at the office, and being the VP, and so he's got that whole business side that he has to deal with. He likes to tell people that I get to go do the happy dance, and
Sure.
yeah, and which I enjoy doing that, and so we come at it from different perspectives. And there's a story, and I don't know if I should share it or not, but I'm going to, and then you can decide if it needs to be cut out. But there, he and I were having a difference of agreement at the office one day, and I got into his big corner office, and he was really upset with me, something that I had promised, and was causing everybody a lot of heartache and headaches, and so he was very upset with me. And I said, you know what, you can't talk to me like that. And he goes, when we're in this office, I can talk to you like that. I said, well, wait till we get home.
Uh,
we've had our moments, but we're a good partnership. We're in our personal life and in our professional life. And honest to goodness, he has supported me in every aspect of what I've ever wanted to do in this business from the beginning. And that's so critical. I mean, that's just so critical. When I first started going to ASCC 18 years ago, I went as a spouse and
Sure.
did all of the spouse activities and got to know all of the spouses, and then got to know all of the husbands, and so that to me has been a great advantage in my career, that I know both sides of that experience. From being a spouse and also being a business owner. And so that's invaluable. I mean, I'm really grateful for that.
Well, you can talk the talk and walk the walk on both sides. So you got that
That's
going.
one of the things with me doing the art tours at all the conferences, and when it all started out, it was mostly the spouses, because they wanted to learn about art, and their concrete husbands didn't care about art and kind of attitude and stuff like that. And I struggled a lot trying to like get some of these major concrete guys to even pay attention to me or talk to me, because they're like, oh, you're some crazy artist. I don't want to, it's a whole different world for them.
With a
And
jester hat on.
yes, exactly. I didn't have, but yes. And so it actually kind of worked in my favor because, and I saw this, it was the long-term plan. It wasn't that I was going to do one or art tour, then all of a sudden everybody was going to know who I was. It was the long-term plan that the wife was going to come with me and get to know me and get to know how I talk about art and go back and talk about it. So then when we go to the dinners and stuff like that, then those guys would come up and go, yeah, I heard my wife said she had a really great time. And I was like, well, you should really come too. Yeah, that's what they said too, but I don't really care that much about art. And I was like, yeah, but I talk about all sorts of stuff. It's not, So I went round and round, and it slowly built to now some of those guys are following them, and they're coming too, and they're getting to know me more because of it. Then they're going to talk to their friends that wouldn't talk to me before, and they're saying, no, the guy's pretty cool. And it worked. They all started talking to me because of it. It was a long-term plan. It wasn't like a get rich quick scheme. It was, I want these people to know that it's okay. I'm not that complicated to talk to just because I went to art school and you didn't. It's not that bad. And my art tours are not just about the art. It's about materials and methods. It's about stuff that you can relate to. They just don't know that. They just assume. I mean, I remember the first time Bev was like, oh, you're going to go talk about the architecture of the building. No, I'm going to talk about outgassing, and I'm going to talk about what oil does and how it falls apart on the inside and it rots the canvas from the inside. And the same things that you see on your floor, we can see on this painting right here. And they were like, what? No one caught it, but it was a slow journey to get people to understand what I was trying to say. And I think it worked. And I think it's been very successful. And I keep getting more and more people following, and the same people are following plus more. It's not that they went once and was like, okay, I did it. That's fine. No, that's like, oh, I got to take that tour again because we have no idea what to expect. We don't know how quick Rick's going to get into trouble. It's always the bet is when I get in trouble first. The last two times I haven't gotten in trouble. Well, no, I did get kicked out of Grand Rapids, but that wasn't my fault. Yeah.
Taking responsibility is the first step.
It wasn't my fault, but that's okay. I still took responsibility.
No, I think that's an important point. I mean, in terms of integrating, I think one of the things that we've done really well in the last, I'm going to say 5-6 years, is integrating all the different types of concrete contractors in together, talking to each other more and understanding what each person does a little bit better. So we're not just kind of a separate group and kind of out on our own island. People are really starting to integrate more and talk to each other more, and that's valuable for whether you're building, multi-story buildings or pouring big slabs. It's been helpful, I think, across the board for everybody.
I completely agree with that, and I think we've done a very good job at integrating, as our committees. like diverse. I mean, like the emerging leaders, you would think it's just a bunch of young people, right? But it's like, no, this half the room is got a lot of veterans in there, which I think is great. And um, like one thing that brings up to my mind is like Pat Harrison with SSI. He brought up the fact that I needed to be on the concrete polishing committee for ACI, and and I was like, I don't even do concrete polishing. He's like, I know, that's why I need you. He's like, you pour the concrete that they have to polish. He's like, I need your input in there to be able to do that. And him and Clark kind of got me involved in that, even though I don't polish concrete. But here I am, a voting member of the polishing committee for ACI, and it's no different with the ASCC. I think the integration with the decorative and regular concrete contractors, and now like when we adopted all the concrete polishing council, it's been fantastic. Just extra wealths of knowledge and knowing more connections of people to call and ask questions to if you need to.
Well, it's reality, right? And then you bring a piece of that reality to the table, as does a concrete polishing person, and then again, we're teaching people the proper way to do it and what the expectation should be, and that everybody's able to walk in. I mean, there was no concrete polishing spec before CPC joined us, and we got that done. That was everybody was guessing what was supposed to go on out there. I mean, we've helped set that standard. So what does that do? Well, then that helps you, because then you can help set expectations for your owner too if they want a polished finish. You have to have all voices at the table so that it's well understood, and it just makes all of our jobs easier, and also makes it easier for us to get paid at the end of the day. When we set all the expectations up front, we gave them all the information. It's backed up between ACI and ASCC, and now people know what polished concrete should be and what to expect.
I agree. We didn't have that 10 years ago.
No, that's current. What the way things have changed in my time at ASCC in 18 years is like night and day. And it just keeps getting better.
Even in my 12 years, it's changed dramatically. It's been crazy.
Yeah, no, it's super. It's just way positive. If you had told me 18 years ago when I went to the first CEO, it was called CEO Forum back then, not Self. Right. It was at, I think it was Spanish Landing up at Pebble Beach, that I would be sitting here as the president of ASCC. That wasn't even on that was nowhere even in my imagination or on my radar. I mean, I still have to pinch myself.
Well, and that's what I was about to say too. I was about to go into that of, you're right. I mean, you think about in the last 10 years, in all the time that I've been involved, you've been involved, no one would have imagined, not first of all, a decorative concrete person being the president of the board, first and foremost. We talked about this before, let alone a female president. Now let's put both of those together and we get it all in one time. We get the first female and the first DCC all in one swoop. How has that been for you? Did you have any pushback from that, to be honest with you?
Do you get a fancy throne?
Nah, it's a concrete throne.
Oh, nice.
No. How has it been for me? So when I was asked, I used to go, the way I started being involved with the board was being the director of the Decorative Concrete Council. So let's just say that was 10 years ago, and I don't know those dates for certain right now. I probably should have looked that up before I came and sat down with you guys, but let's say it was 10 years ago. And I got to go to the board meetings, which was it was incredibly intimidating to go sit down with that board and then tell them what was going on with the DCC. So I did that for 2 years. When I was finished with that, I was asked to remain on the board. And at that time, besides Bev Garnett. I was the only female on the board at that time.
Probably even in the room.
Well, there were there were a few in the room. But so did that. And then Scott Anderson gave me a call, I don't know, probably about 6 years, maybe 8 years ago now, and said, we'd like you to become part of the executive council. And that was, I mean, that was an amazing honor to me to be asked to be part of that group. It's a really good group, and they work hard. They meet every other week. I mean, really focus on what's going on with the ASCC. And he said it's a 6-year commitment. And I said, sure, I welcome that. I welcome that challenge. Then as it came to the end of my 6 years, and I asked the question, I said, what does it take to be the president? It was one of those glimmers that I thought, well, I'm not just going to ask the question. And I was told by Bev what the requirements were, and it was Chris Forrester with Largo, who was either president or past president at that point. And he said, well, you've got to have done these things. And I said, well, I've done those things. How do I throw my name in the hat? And he said, well, you've just done it. And so the next thing I knew, I was being told that I was going to be nominated.
You start next week.
Well, I was going to be nominated, and I happened to come in as president at a really challenging time, with Bev leaving and Ray coming in, with the changes with some of the other staff kind of leaving and new folks coming in. So this really major transition. I got to be part of the process of hiring Ray. That was, I realized the enormity of the responsibility. But it was something that I welcomed. And my goal was to really represent that you can be a part of ASCC, you can be a decorative concrete contractor, and you can aspire to be president of this association one day. It's not just going to be if you're the president of, a multi-billion dollar company, that it really is available to anyone if you want to do the work. And it's been rewarding. It's been difficult, but more rewarding than difficult. But I just wanted to set that example.
Well, you've done a very good job at it, and I admire it.
Thank you.
It's okay. Just kidding.
That means a lot to me. It's because you feel like sometimes you're, in a bubble, and you don't really know the perception. But I know that I've worked hard. I know that everybody else on the executive committee works hard. Everyone on the board of directors works hard. I encourage people to be a part of that process, to really understand. And that's the only way we make change. There's really a lot of people that just complain about things and don't ever become part of the solution. And I think if you want things to be better, you make them better. You become part of that. You become part of that team that makes this association better. It's a strong, amazing association.
Well, you've always been a welcomer of change, and I appreciate that as being a young, aspiring concrete guy. And so thank you for that, because and it's just you've always been very genuine to anybody that shows up and does that, exactly that. And if you want to be part of the change and part of everything, then you got to show up, right?
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to, and then I talked to emerging leaders about servant leadership, that that's what I aspire to. That's what I admire. And if you look at ASCC as a whole, and what servant leadership stands for, we're doing that as an association.
I agree.
We share integrity. We want to collaborate. We want to improve everybody. We want to empower people. All of those things that go along with servant leadership, ASCC embodies in my mind. And if you're a part of that without even knowing it, I find out most people don't even realize or haven't ever kind of investigated servant leadership. But if you really investigate it, you see it in action, and then you also see it how it crosses over into your life, as a whole, and into your relationships with other people, and across the board. I just think it's a good way of living your life.
Well, the other thing too, with the amount of time that I've known you all these years now, you're not an introvert. You don't stand in the corner and wait for someone to come talk to you. You're a very positive person in the group, and you want to talk to everybody. And you don't come across as what's the word is like you're inviting. It's inviting to come talk to you. It's not like if I've never had a problem of coming up to you and saying hi to you from day one. It wasn't like, I mean, from the moment I met you, you guys started talking to me and invited me into your world. I mean, heck, we all know Byron's one of the main reasons why I'm a part of the organization and why I finally joined. So you guys have always been there for me, and I really do appreciate it a lot. And I'm glad that we finally got to do this to show that respect back to you and remind you that, yes, I did listen all those years ago. Yes, it did mean something. It has changed the future of my company and my personality and how I view this industry and everything like that. But it has been a big deal to watch your growth on top of all of us growing around you because of it too. We do kind of follow in a roundabout way. I feel like I did kind of follow your growth at the same time, and it made me want to grow more too, because you have a high standard, and you have a high standard in a positive way, and not in a disrespectful way or in a negative way where you're like, of course, like, but you show people a reason to do better across the board in everything we do. And there's nothing more positive than that I can even think of. And I really appreciate the patience you have had with me for all these years, because it has meant something to me.
You know what? Both of your words. I mean, it's just that means so much to me. So thank you for that. I mean, I appreciate it.
But you're a Raiders fan, so we
Raider Nation for life. That's how it, for good, for bad. Yeah. It's a hard job to be a Raiders fan.
But you're a Las Vegas Raiders fan, not an Oakland Raiders fan, correct?
Yeah, I was a Charger fan for years and years and years, and the owners of the Chargers told us to, us folks from San Diego, to take a leap, and so we did. And Byron and I were part of the team that helped build the Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, and the logo out front is sun deck material and is holding up beautifully. And so we enjoy it. We not every game is as enjoyable as the other one, but we've learned humility. And we have 4 season tickets, so we always take 2 people from the opposing team, and that, yeah. And so we kind of take protection along, because if you've ever been to Allegiant Stadium, it's probably 50-50 in terms of
fans.
Yes, the fan base.
Right.
Yeah, it's wicked.
Yeah. Well, because you got an imported team. And then you got the easiest place for anybody in the United States to get to.
Yes.
So, yeah.
All of this is way better than being a Browns fan, for the record.
No, That's a hard one too. Jeff Eisworth went to a game with us, and yeah. So I think, trying to remember, I think we won that one, but yeah, it's a tough. It's been a tough season. That's an understatement.
It's a beautiful stadium with beautiful concrete. That's what matters, right?
Well, there you go. I mean, we were at Disney. You guys that were you've been to downtown Disney in Anaheim?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were there with Bowmanite one year for their meeting, and a bunch of us were outside. We were walking up and down downtown Disney, and we had a security guard come up to us, and he goes, "You guys are with that concrete group, aren't you?" And we said, "Well, how do you know that?" And they said, "We've been watching you for the last hour, looking at the concrete, looking at your feet."
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's how you can always tell a concrete person, right? Is to just walk. Oh, look at that! They're staring at the ground everywhere. Yeah.
Well, actually, it's any flooring, because I was like that from tile too. Because I did tile for 7 years before I did concrete. So I was doing the same thing from day one, and then that's what changed it into concrete. It blew my mind even more. Now it makes me laugh when I see tile floors. I'm like, you have no idea what I could do underneath that tile right now.
What a lack of imagination is that?
Right.
Matt, before I forget, those were great looking stairs. That project was beautiful that you posted with the light.
Thank you.
Yeah, your guys killed it.
That was a fun project. That was one of those ones where you got an owner and you try to help them understand what it's going to take to be able to do this and do it properly. And luckily, it's one of those owners that, like you said, Rick, are with you every step of the way, and that's what makes it successful. And it turned out great. And we might not be really decorative concrete contractors, but I guess we kind of are, just because we'll figure it out and nobody else will, apparently. So I don't know, but thank you.
Yeah. Nice job.
Well, awesome. Do we have anything else?
I have one more question.
Go ahead. Who
is Cinnamon Rivers?
Oh, I know this one.
I have to deliver the bad news. That Cinnamon passed away.
Yes.
Oh, no.
There was a large wind that comes up during monsoon season out on the Colorado River, and she just couldn't hold on, and we found her in pieces. The next day, we were going to bury her out in the Colorado River, but thought that probably wasn't in the interest of ecology. That probably wasn't and probably scaring people to death, up and down the Colorado River. So she went into, she was buried in the dumpster.
Oh, good. That's a good spot. That's a good spot for her. We should probably explain Cinnamon Rivers is a mannequin.
Well, yes, she was. And she was actually, I came home one day from work and there was a box sitting on my front porch, and we have a friend who lives in Palm Springs, Matt, not too far from your folks' place, who has 3 mannequins. And so he, when I looked at it and it said mannequin, Byron said, "What's in the box on the front porch?" I said, "Your friend, Glenn, bought you a mannequin." And he goes, "Oh, that's why it's still outside, right?" And so brought her in. People contributed to her clothing. We contributed all of her clothing upon her demise to no one, because no other people would wear that clothing. But people would wave at her from across the river because we had her hand up looking like she was waving. And
she stood up on the porch like this, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it was their hand they were looking at, but
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
I would agree with you. She was a completely and completely inappropriate and not politically correct, but that's who we are sometimes as decorative. Well, not even just decorative contractors. That's something we all have in common.
Sure.
Well, there is more to this story, man. So I was introduced to the story of Cinnamon Rivers back when she had her own Facebook account
oh, that's
and
right. I
was
forgot about that.
posting, and they were posting all the time about her. And so I was asking about it. And right after that, I coincidentally, because my wife is a horror fanatic, so we started buying a couple skeletons, and I started putting them around my yard and taking photographs. And so just even this year, Chris asked how they were doing, and I showed her a new picture of them that I had posed them, so we do have a little bit of a mannequin background between the two of us of another story that of all the years of knowing each other. And I still have most of my skeletons, but some of them are in pieces, and some of them are scattered in certain places in the yard because they're in pieces. And my neighbors don't come over. It's really funny, and they think that we're very strange because of it. And they're all year round. This is not just for Halloween. It started for Halloween, but it is all year round. We have skeletons scattered all over our yard, and we have 3.5 acres, so it's pretty funny actually.
That's a little
I'm just,
scary.
yeah. It keeps the solicitors out, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also have a 7-foot tall pink bunny in the front too. So, there's that also. So it's a very strange house over here too. I know how you feel.
I'm just sad that I never got to meet her. It was, but in another life.
Not. I don't believe that she will ever be replaced. But you never, with the circle of friends that we have, you never say never.
Never know what to
I'll
expect.
start working on that.
Yeah, if a big giant brown box shows up on your front porch that says mannequin,
Yeah.
could be her sister or her brother. You just never know.
That's good. Well,
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time. This has been great, and I hope everybody learns a lot more about Chris and ASCC in general. That is the goal to this podcast. And yeah, that's unless you guys have any last words, I just wanted to say thank you for your time, and tune in next time, and we will see everybody again soon.
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.